Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon, Vignesh.
Great to have you today. So, Peter, just as a start off, just before we start the conversation, in today's environment, obviously, we're seeing a huge increase in power demand, right? So we're expecting a threefold increase in power demand over the next 25 years. As a result, we're going to see a significant amount of investment into new technologies and upgrading the existing infrastructure on the network. Obviously, we've got Peter from Ausgrid here. Ausgrid being one of the major utility electricity distributors on the east coast of Australia, supplying a significant portion of the eastern part of the Australian network. Obviously, going through some sustainability initiatives that we're going to be discussing today. So I guess, Peter, I'll start off with you, just a bit of an introduction. So if you can give us a little bit of an overview on, some of the sustainability goals that Ausgrid have today.
Okay, thanks for the question, Vignesh. Look, Ausgrid's got a number of sustainability goals, and in amongst those is an obvious one, which is to decarbonise the network and to assist businesses and the rest of Australia to achieve their net zeros and that. So in amongst that, there's a whole lot of factors, but there's what we call line losses, which are the network losses for wheeling the power through the network. And there's also carbon emissions that are happening in relation to that process which in the network. So, we've got a challenge there to reduce our SF6 losses, which we've been accounting for over the years. And we've just moved from what we called an estimated basis for our SF6 losses to a measured basis, and just in that accounting alone, we've managed to reduce our SF6 emissions by 40%.
Okay, that's significant. It's great. You've actually taken on a measure to actually measure the current SF6 usage, and just taking one small step has actually made a reduction. I guess that's great to hear, and obviously you touched on SF6 free as an area you are focusing on from a sustainability goal perspective. Now we know SF6 gas is a very potent gas, and it's the environmental impacts we've heard about it, and the world as a world we're trying to move away from it because we've got some global warming conditions at the moment and challenges. I guess the path that you're sort of looking at, what is the sort of the selection criteria and the path you're looking at from choosing an appropriate SF6 technology on the network?
Yeah, well, when we embarked on this this path, the obvious outcome was that we were looking for a gas or an insulant that was going to not impact the environment. So that was pretty well a given. The pure air or air was the answer. We weren't too interested in mixed gases or anything like that because that created other issues for managing that further down the track. So a pure air solution was somewhat a given, and then it was about being able to manage whatever product we got into our network, noting that we've got a very large installed base. We've got over 7,300 pieces of secondary equipment, which is all in RMU format and is all filled with SF6 gas. So that's just the gas population that we have now that we have to manage going forward as well.
Okay, that's a significant amount of assets on the network just on one utility, right? So as you mentioned, Peter. So I guess, Peter, you touched on the aspect of you're focusing on SF6, and you gave us a bit of a brief overview on the selection criteria as well. But obviously today in Australia we don't have legislations like in Europe and European Union. Obviously there's a legislation coming in which is restricting the use of SF6 from 2026. In Australia, obviously, it's driven by other factors. So what are some of the factors sort of driving that change? And how does Ausgrid stay on top of that in terms of being ahead of the curve?
Yeah, thanks. As you said, there's no regulations driving us in Australia yet, which so consequently Ausgrid decided that as part of its greenhouse gas reporting, annual reporting, that to start looking at these sorts of solutions needed to be done so we could get on a pathway so that inevitably if regulations did occur later down the track, we'd already have some experience and a way to go going forward. So yeah, it was initiated internally, basically based on greenhouse gas emissions and reporting to try and show a pathway forward for the future.
That's good. That's interesting to hear. So obviously it's a voluntary step that Ausgrid have taken, and obviously to reduce your carbon emissions and work on your scope 1, scope 2 as well, so which is great to hear. Now, the other aspect, just before we sort of step through so in terms of technologies, there are so many technologies out there, right? So I'll touch on the technologies, but before I do that, there is a QR code on the screen. So I'm going to ask you all in the room to try and take your phone out. It's an opportunity for you to interact a little as well. So we spoke about, SF6 being an environmentally unfriendly gas, an artificial gas that was made. So I'm keen to understand if you can just scan that QR code and what do you think the amount of CO2 emissions that we would potentially emit with 1 kilo of SF6? So if you could just take a couple of seconds. So while the audience do take the time to try and answer, I guess, Peter, to you, you mentioned the number of assets on the network at the moment, so it's a significant amount of assets on the network, and if I multiply it by the amount of CO2 emissions, that would be significant. Keen to understand, the pathway you're sort of considering in terms of the transition pathway. You touched on it briefly, but are you able to expand a little bit more?
Well, it's early days at this stage. Obviously, one of the issues is sourcing this type of equipment. So it's new on the market. It's not always fully available in Australia because of basically a lot of manufacturers are all focused on the European regulations. So they're supplying the European markets, which demand equipment to meet the regulations. In Australia, as we said, there's no regulations at this stage. So, yeah, it was a challenge to go on this pathway, but it was obviously something, the sooner we got on it, the less painful hopefully it'll be further down the track.
Thanks, Peter. So it's great to, we see organisations like Ausgrid coming forward to take that initiative, that first step initiative, to explore alternatives to make a better impact in the environment. Now, we just had a survey, obviously, just thought we'll display some of the results. So it's interesting observation of results, but obviously majority coming in at 23,500 in terms of CO2 emissions. So that's pretty much spot on. I guess in terms of 1 kilo SF6, which is typically what you see, if I take a ring main unit, like on the Ausgrid network, a 3-function ring main unit is typically about 1.5 kilos. So if 1 kilo is 23,500 CO2 emissions, that's a significant amount of emissions. And if you multiply by the number of RMUs and switchgear out there on the network, that is significant. So it's an opportunity we can actually make an impact now, so it's great to hear. The other aspect as well, I guess, Peter, is so we spoke about some of the opportunities, right? And you touched on some of the challenges briefly. What other challenges are you sort of seeing in terms of, making this transition?
Well, additional to introduce, you've got to handle the end of life of the existing equipment, which is gas filled, and so that is a challenge in itself, because disposal of SF6 equipment is challenging. There's a limited service out there for it, and it's costly, and it is an arduous process because we require tracking of the gas. We just don't allow them to take the whole lot off site and it's gone. We need evidence at the back end of it of the gas that's been recovered out of the equipment as well, to account for our reporting and that. So the disposal process for existing equipment is an impost. So there's obviously the benefits that arise from that by moving to the pure air solution in the longer run. With the equipment itself, when we introduce it, or when we're looking at it, selecting it, the challenges have been, of course, footprint and physical size and that. So in a lot of cases, we've got, as I said, the 7,000 odd units installed. We're looking for something that we can also retrofit, not just new sites. New sites, greenfield sites, are obviously somewhat simpler. You can build to design. But if you've got existing pad mount kiosk solutions and whatever, and you want to retrofit it into it, it becomes challenging. So the actual dimensions of the equipment are quite a significant issue, and also the configuration for cable routing. So we have instances where, in most cases, we have what we call a feeder transformer feeder arrangement, or feeder tee-off feeder arrangement. So we want to keep that configuration in existing situations and that, especially in kiosks, because you want to put back a new piece of equipment which sort of saves you from trying to manage changing all the cable routing and that and having to shift it. So that has been a challenge in one of the things. So it's the configuration of the equipment, it's the physical size, and then of course it's the familiarity with staff operating it and that. So we've got to introduce equipment that staff can understand, and in a lot of cases we're looking for stuff or equipment that has similarities to existing types of equipment, and it's not a big shock to operating staff about how to operate this new types of equipment.
Thanks, Peter. So there's quite a few challenges to work through, obviously. If I summarise quickly, obviously you spoke about footprint, the training that's required for staff and familiarity, and then obviously retrofitting existing sites. So these are real challenges that we'll have to work through. And that's something interesting, obviously, following on from this is today, obviously, Ausgrid's taking a lead in terms of that transition, and you're looking at this quite seriously. But we also have, obviously, private customers connecting onto your grid. So when you do have private customers, would you make any recommendations to them? We might have some in the room who actually have a high voltage connection as well, to consider about the transition as well.
The only thing I'd really recommend up front is start sooner than later. Start looking at using non-SF6 equipment at the earliest possible. Usually your sites are smaller or more manageable than a utility network. So the sooner you introduce it, the sooner you'll start to move on from the legacy issues that you will have eventually with SF6 equipment. SF6 being good, it's not a devil or advocate or anything. It's very good equipment, it performs well, but it has this implication that is impacting us for achieving net zero.
It's great you sort of mentioned that, and I guess as between Schneider and Ausgrid, last year we started some trials with the first internal arc-rated kiosk, which contains an RMS set with pure air, as you refer to. So it's probably one of Australia's first kiosks that was actually trialled. Keen to hear your journey on that, obviously right from the innovation, the ability to actually step out from the comfort zone and look beyond SF6, and then the journey that you took partnering with Schneider?
Well, I'd have to say it was pretty easy. It was a given. We were already in a partnership with Schneider over the supply of kiosks, and so that gave us a natural pathway forward to adopt the RMS solution. We're already working with them on a number of issues with kiosks, so we introduced the RMS into the equation and looked at developing that jointly with Schneider and integrating the asset into a fully IOC kiosk, AMB rated. And it was a fully automated kiosk as well, so it's a smart solution, so to speak. And we worked through all the issues to integrate the the RMS, and we came out with a solution which was pretty much seamless to our staff. We ended up with the same size kiosk as we had before, same configuration. There wasn't any big shock in cabling. Systems are identical. We took the opportunity to introduce elbow type terminations. Most people probably are used to that anyway, but Ausgrid was been very conservative for years and hasn't used elbow terminations on the feeder connections purely because of operational reasons within the utility. We've now adopted those elbow terminations, and we've got quite a reasonable package that's been delivered, the final outcome.
Thanks, Peter, for the overview. Obviously, Peter touched on a couple of aspects there. So just to probably elaborate on that, obviously, it's been a great journey working with Ausgrid, I've got to say, hearing back from the team in terms of providing some of the commentary and support around the way it should be designed. And it's probably setting the standards that many of the other utilities and many of the other customers are actually following as well, which is great to hear. I guess to all of you in the room as well, if you do want to, sort of learn a little bit more and you want to feel, we do have some of the SF6 free equipment in the hub, so please do take the time. We've got some experts there as well, so do connecting with them as well. I guess, just Peter, I guess one more question for you before I sort of hand over to the audience is, it's been a great journey together, and obviously, you're sort of on the milestone to look at alternatives, and pure air being one of them. I'm just keen to understand, obviously, you mentioned pure air as, your preference currently. Obviously, there are different gases in the market, right, in terms of when we talk about SF6 free, in terms of available options. You got some background on, why you would prefer pure air as opposed to some of the other technologies available in the market from an SF6 free perspective?
Like I might have alluded to before, the pure air is really a no-brainer in regards to the future. You know that if it ever becomes a furtive gas, it's not going to impact the environment. If you ever have to recover it, then or decommission the unit, the recovery is not an issue. And that managing any other gas mix is always going to present more challenges, and that for handling, even if it's a low impact gas or whatever, or if you've got to do a top up function or something, then being able to get the correct mix to put back into it, the mix that the manufacturer requires, is going to be a challenge as well. Having that gas available locally and on hand. So the pure air solution is just so easy to go forward with, and that for a whole of life perspective. And I just add on the kiosk as well. We've had road shows internally with the Schneider kiosk with the RMS, and that we've had quite a few staff come through, look at it, operators, cable joining staff. All the feedback's been positive to date. They're very accepting of it, and we're looking forward to use it and potentially go with more in the future.
That's great. No, thanks for sharing your experience, and thanks for sharing some of the, I guess, the criteria you followed of why you prefer pure air as opposed to some of the other options out there in the market. Now, just on that, obviously, there is going to be another QR code, so opportunity for you. Obviously, Peter mentioned some of the key characteristics of why, he selected pure air from an Ausgrid perspective. Thank you very much for joining the session. Hope you found it informative. But if you do need any further information, Peter's available, please, and I'm available as well. And we've got our team available in the hub as well, so take the time to speak to us as well. Thank you, and hope you enjoy the next session.